What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another very exciting episode right here on the MIgardener channel. I hope you guys are going to enjoy this one because in today's episode, we're going to be tackling probably one of the most common questions surrounding pollinators, and that's why aren't honeybees visiting my garden? And if honeybees are not visiting my garden, how can pollination still occur? So we're going to tackle both of these questions because they do come up pretty much in the same question or the same kind of concern pretty synonymously with each other. So I hope you guys are going to enjoy this one. Let's dive into it. It's starting to sprinkle, but I got to get this one done so that way you guys can grow big or go home. Let's go. The first reason why pollinators are not visiting your garden is because there's not enough flowers to attract them. Flowers are their food source, and so if your food source is closer and there's more of them, you're going to go to that food source. Think about it this way. If you have a clover patch that's 50 feet away, or you have a pot of flowers up on the 30th floor of a high-rise building, and you're a butterfly, which one are you going to go to? Or a honeybee, or any pollinator for that matter, which one are you going to go to? You're going to go to the clover patch. It's much easier to get to, it's much closer, and there's more abundance there. The next thing is that since it's their food source, we have to talk about energy. It actually takes way more energy for them to fly all the way up to that 30th floor than it does to just go over to the clover patch. If you were given an apple and it was 5 feet away, and you were given an apple and it was 200 feet away and you were starving, which one would you go to? The closer one. So even if there is an equal amount of food source, they're going to go to the one that's closer. So if you have, like I said, if you have a rooftop garden versus a garden right on ground level where there's more pollinators coming and going, they're going to be more visiting the ones closest to them before they go to the one further away. They'll expel the food source that's closest to them, basically. And so those are two reasons, I guess, in one, why pollinators are not visiting your garden. The second reason why pollinators aren't visiting your garden is because you're not planting things that attract them. So you might be planting flowers, but if the flowers don't provide enough nectar or pollen, there's really nothing to attract them. Because again, the purpose of a pollinator is not to come to your flower. The flower attracts the pollinator, but there has to be a mutual benefit there, that the flower is giving a food source to the pollinator. The pollinator just doesn't come just to spread pollen from a male flower to a female flower. It does it because it's a food source. That's just a byproduct. There's a symbiotic relationship there where the plant becomes pollinated in exchange for feeding a pollinator. Those two go hand in hand. But if the plant does not have anything to offer the pollinator, they won't show up. The third reason why bees and other pollinators aren't visiting your garden is because there are none. This is obviously a really obvious answer, but something that you have to assess. Is your area not hospitable to pollinators? If you live amongst an entire cornfield and all you have is cornfields surrounding you, there's not a whole lot of pollinators that are interested in pollinating corn, since corn is pollinated by the wind. And therefore, if you're surrounded by 5 miles in every direction of cornfields, there's going to be far less pollinators coming to your garden because their interest is elsewhere. You might have this little oasis of flowers and vegetables that they can come pollinate, but if they have to fly so far away, it's kind of like point one why there's not a lot of pollinators. You just might be isolated, and you might be kind of plant locked, if that's a term. Probably is. But if you're plant locked by plants that they're not interested in, and it creates a barrier where they're not really invited into your property because there's no food anywhere in between, they're really not going to make any effort to come visit you. The fourth reason why pollinators are not visiting your plants is actually kind of a trick, because the fourth reason why pollinators aren't visiting your plants is because you're just not seeing them. They are visiting your plants, you're just not looking for the right ones. I think so often we look at pollinators as being honeybees or butterflies, the really obvious pollinators that we learn about in school. Bumblebees, honeybees, butterflies, and moths. These are 4 insects that do pollinate, but there are hundreds, if not thousands, of other ones that do still pollinate. Even ants are pollinators. Believe it or not, ants are pollinators. In Florida, most pollination does happen through the form of honeybees and other native bees. But about 10% of pollination is done through ants. That's crazy. And so ants might not be seen as a pollinator to you and I because we're not looking for ants as a pollinator. We're looking for honeybees. All right, and the fifth and final reason why pollinators are not visiting your garden as it's starting to rain even harder yet is because you don't have enough of the same type of flower. Now, I'm by no means saying monoculture. You can still have a polyculture, but you need more than one type of each plant, Because if you just have one bean plant and one tomato plant and one pepper plant and one zucchini plant, there's not enough of the flowers from each variety to really entice a pollinator. You'll notice that when a pollinator is doing its work, it'll go from one flower to the next flower, to the next flower, to the next flower. But it doesn't go from a zucchini flower to a tomato flower to a pepper flower. It just doesn't. And that's because the pollinator's duty as a pollinator is to cross-pollinate flowers of the same kind. And that way it spreads diversity and it spreads the pollen count from each male flower to each female flower. You get cross-pollination, you get a much more robust seed culture than the following year. And that's the duty of a pollinator. You're not going to get a tomato crossed with a pumpkin because they're not same varieties. And so while a pollinator can go to a zucchini plant and a tomato plant, generally they don't want to until they've touched enough flowers to really do their due diligence. Now, I know I did not talk directly on honeybees in this episode, but all of these topics and all of these reasons included honeybees, because honeybees are under the umbrella of pollinators. I understand that as gardeners, we want to see honeybees in our garden because they're kind of the staple of a productive garden. We always hear people say, if you got honeybees, you'll increase the production. And there is a correlation, absolutely. But I don't want us to detract from the fact that honeybees are just some of the pollinators out there. And in order to have a successful garden, you have to have pollination, period. That doesn't matter if it's a honeybee, an ant, a fly, a bumblebee, a moth, a butterfly. It doesn't matter. So what we want to focus on is pollinators in general. By following some of these reasons and understanding some of these reasons why pollinators aren't visiting, you'll also understand why honeybees might not be visiting. But the thing with honeybees that you have to understand is that honeybees are very specific. Based on the time of year, based on the temperature, based on their life cycle, they're going to need different things. And so the reasons why honeybees might not be visiting your garden is a whole lot different than why pollinators aren't visiting your garden. Because honeybees, they might just be finicky that day, but other pollinators aren't. And so if other pollinators are not visiting your crops, there's something that you need to change. There's something that you need to look at, and there might be reasons why. So that's why I focused more on the broader topic of pollinators. I hope you guys understand. I hope you guys appreciate this episode. I hope you guys learned something new, and I really hope that you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to throw a like up there. That helps spread this video around. Comment down below with something you learned, something that you didn't think about before, and also make sure to spread this video with your friends. I know for a fact that they'll enjoy it, and it helps, again, spread this video around. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned something new. As always, this is Luke from the MIgardener channel, reminding you to grow big or go home. We'll catch you all later. See ya. Bye.